Welcome, everyone, to the latest installment of High on Awards, the High on Films podcast series. Uh, I'm Ronald Meyer from the US. Today, I am joined by my regular co host, Virat Nehru from Australia, and we have a special guest, Thomas Gladstone from the UK, whose work you can see on his YouTube channel, Oscar Buzz.
Of course, no relation
Did I
to
already say that?
Lily Gladstone, Thomas.
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of. There could be some secret ancestry. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. And Thomas is the youngest crew member of the group so far and something I've realized in real time, it's given me an existential crisis. So welcome, Thomas. Thank you for.
Well,
making
thank
me
you for
feel
having me. I
old.
always love to take. Well, yes, of course, but love
You
to talk
wanna
about awards. So
Do you want to reveal what comment of Thomas's triggered that existential crisis?
Well, Thomas mentioned how old he was when the very first Avatar film came out. And
2000.
would you like to reveal, Thomas, how old you were when the first Avatar film came out? Because I
I
can't
was
repeat
3
it.
years old then.
3
Yeah,
years old.
I was 3 years
Three.
old. 2006. Not quite 18 yet. So not quite 18. That's how old I am. But you know.
I think this takes care of the fact that people tell me that I don't hang out with young people. Maybe you can teach me some young lingo,
Exactly.
and it could all be fine. It's all this
We'll
millennial
see about that.
anxiety.
We'll see about that. Of course. Yeah.
So what are we doing today, guys? It's actually we're recording in 3 different time zones, which is really interesting. Ron is in the US, I'm in Australia, and Thomas is in the UK. Feels like the past, present, and future converging into one. So it feels like, the multiverse of madness all over again. So there we go. There you go, Marvel. We've fixed it for you.
There you go.
Thank you, and send me the check.
With a better version of the MCU. This is a crossover people really wanted to see,
Yeah,
Forget any of the other crossovers.
CCU. It's the Critics Universe, right? It's the
Exactly.
Critics Cinematic Universe. Yeah.
We need to mint that, or coin that, rather.
I'm registering the URL and the domain name as we speak. All right. So what are we talking about? What's this episode going to be about? We've covered Best Director. We've covered the acting categories. We've covered the international features. And now we've come to the big gong, the Best Picture nominees. And that's why we need Thomas's help, because this is, 2 heads are better than 3. No, 3 heads are better than 2. There we go.
3 heads are better than 2. Yes, there we go.
So, and we need all the help we can get, because, this is an anatomy of Best Picture nominations.
You're desperate to
We've
make that the
also
title, aren't you?
decided-
Just sneak in early and it can be the title. Is that your thought process? I saw that.
I wanted to get my hate of Anatomy of a Fall out early, so I don't have to revisit it as the episode goes on, and we can have a normal conversation in civilized fashion. And so that's okay.
Of course.
And Thomas is also here because Virat and I decided after our disagreement regarding Cara Jade Myers that we need a referee.
Yeah, I'll happily occupy that role for you.
Yeah, but because there's someone else who likes
pick,
Cara Jade Myers, right? There is your co-host Trevor, who agrees to Cara Jade Myers.
It was, and then he leaned back on that. He did revert back on that, because he I think recognizes that is a bit too crazy.
All these people recounting, you're under oath on the jury. It's the cinematic jury. You can't take it back. What is this?
Yeah. No,
Anyway.
our October Oscar predictions are gospel. They're the ones that we go with the entire year. No changes allowed.
Good.
Let's actually talk about this category today as if we're in October. And let's think about how many things have really changed since October. Have our predictions dramatically shifted since? Has anything really fallen out or come back? Some people are saying that Past Lives is having a resurgence, and while I sort of see where they're going with that, I never really thought it wasn't getting nominated for Best Picture. I always thought it was safely in the 10. Maybe now it's just that it's sort of cracked the top 5. What do you guys think after Celine Song's surprise nomination for a directing Golden Globe?
Yeah, I think Past Lives is on track to do quite well. I mean, I think its slight problem in terms of being a top contender is that neither Celine Song or Greta Lee are definites. They're sort of fifth or sixth in their respective categories. I think it's definitely obviously in Screen, but I think it is definitely comfortably in Picture now. It's easily A24's obviously their top contender. You know, they've got the Iron Claw as well, but it's going to be Past Lives that they're campaigning for. And so, yeah, I think it's in line
And
for a very
Zone of
safe
Interest,
nomination.
of course.
It's
So
also got Zone of Interest as well. Yeah. But yeah, go
it's
ahead.
interesting. I do feel before Zone of Interest, before I'd seen Zone of Interest come October, I hadn't seen that. And Past Lives would be the one A24 film that I thought easily would be like, the one they would be putting all their money behind. But I think as the Iron Claw came out, and then I haven't seen it yet. It's not come out in Australia yet. Hasn't been any screenings either, unfortunately. And even with the Zone of Interest, suddenly, I don't know if I was sitting in A24's office, which would be my pick. And maybe they would spread the love and sort of campaign in individual categories. And like you said, Thomas, Past Lives is a better chance with Greta Lee. So they'd put all their money in that sort of category. Zone of Interest for Best Picture. And maybe, Zac Efron
Director.
acting for Iron Claw. I do think so.
I thought you were going to say Jonathan Glazer is like, I mean, I
directing
like
as well.
Of us have been predicting, Glazer since it's Con premiere, just because it sounded so audacious on a conceptual.
And there's also the outside chance of Dream Scenario and Nicolas Cage also. But that's an outside wishlisty chance.
I mean, that is outside. Yeah, I mean, technically you could even add Kaylee Spaney from Priscilla to that, but I'm not sure. I do agree that A24 do have more options now, but Past Lives seems to be like the one that it's the logical pick to put your money behind. Even Zone of Interest as well. I don't think it needs campaigning in necessarily the same way. That is very much going to be just a word of mouth because, the eyes on it are going to be the people that like it anyway. Whereas Past Lives, I feel like if you get more eyes on it, you're more likely to sort of invest new people into it and get new people excited about it. Whereas Zone of Interest, if you've seen it, you're already talking about it, you're already raving about it. You don't need eyes on it in the same way as Past Lives, I think, for campaigning. But either way, solid pick to get in there. I don't think that's ever going to shake. I never really shook on that. Like, yes, it was maybe decreasing at a time, but with the Golden Globes, such a good performance there, did well at Critics' Choice. I think we can just safely say that's a maybe top 5. I'd argue it's probably more in that 6, 7, 8 range, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come October, around that time, we had, huge momentum, obviously, with Oppenheimer and Barbie. Oppenheimer kind of taking over everything, and Killers of the Flower Moon. So these were your kind of big ticket items, which we thought were kind of locked in, and then everybody would fight for the 4th and 5th spot. And now that seems to be no longer the case. I think Barbie, for me, has kind of slipped down in terms of a lock-in in terms of the top 2 to maybe a 4th or a 5th spot. So there is a possibility that Barbie slipped down a bit in terms of critical appraisal also, and as more movies are coming and sort of, showing their weight, like American Fiction, for example, and other movies contending for that 4th and 5th spot. So things are not as clear-cut. Poor Things as well coming out and having a strong showing. So, I don't know. I think probably the 2 contenders that were there in the running in October would be Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon, that I still think are locked in. And Past Lives, thankfully it hasn't shaken off the kind of other kind of surge that's come through. But Barbie is in trouble in terms of a top pick to now a lower ranked pick in the 4th or 5th spot. And now we have other contenders like American Fiction coming through, or, The Color Purple, which, hasn't opened here, but showing strong as a possibility. Who knows? So it's become a lot more interesting. It was a very obvious race for a long time. And I think now it's become a lot more interesting. People have different things in the mix, which makes the category more interesting because it was just so boringly obvious for a while.
Yeah, and I very much agree with that point on Barbie. people have been talking like it's going to be Barbie or Oppenheimer to win Best Picture. I've never seen that. I think Barbie is locked in for a nomination, of course. I think it's going to do very well at the Academy. I don't think places will take it seriously enough to give it wins in Best Picture. I think Ryan Gosling can happen. I think original screenplay can happen. I think production design, costume design, and left poor things can develop a narrative are fairly safe wins for it. I just don't think people will take it seriously to win Best Picture, which is why I've always kept it in like this 4 or 5 range. Like maybe you could argue just with how well it's going to do that it is inherently a contender. Like it could win PGA, it could win SAG, it could win WGA, etc., etc. I don't think people will take it seriously enough to be putting it like 1, 2 on their ballots. Obviously, they use a preferential ballot system. I think we will see Barbie come the Oscars get a lot of 9 and 10s on that list. I don't think it will quite have that passion in picture, but it's definitely there, as you say. It's definitely still a contender. It's definitely still in, and it probably is it's definitely top 5. So,
yeah, I agree. Ron, what is your kind of reading? What did you think in October? What the slate was looking like, and what do you think it's looking like now? Has there been any changes for you?
Unfortunately, I'm kind of stuck in the same mindset that I had then. I don't think Oppenheimer is going to win. And for a while, I felt that if it's a tech giant that wins this year, Poor Things is the clear alternative to Oppenheimer. If it's a crowd pleaser again, something, even though I don't even think that's fair because Oppenheimer and Poor Things are very crowd pleasing. But I mean, like, if it's going to be something of a smaller kind of more like character driven scale, then, and I don't even think that's a fair description, but again, just like the sort of the less technically ambitious, more universally appealing, pared down sort of, if we're going to see another Coda or Green Book win, then yeah, it's either the Holdovers or American Fiction. So really that's where I've been torn, especially because in director, I feel like there's no world in which Virat and you and I have spoken about this before. It's the subject of our first episode, but I don't see Poor Things and Oppenheimer splitting picture and director because those picture and director splits don't happen between tech juggernauts unless we're talking about like 12 Years a Slave and Gravity, even though I've mentioned that, like, no, to us they both seem like tech juggernauts. The Academy never gave 12 Years a Slave. The Academy failed to give 12 Years a Slave a Best Cinematography nomination. So, I mean, if we sort of see a repeat of what happened a year ago where the front runner is snubbed and like Hoyt van Hoytema doesn't get in for Oppenheimer, which I don't even think would be so outrageous. If we see that Hoyt van Hoytema doesn't get a cinematography nomination, then I'll be prepared to say, okay, Poor Things is then Gravity and Oppenheimer is 12 Years a Slave. I don't know if, like, what do you guys think of that comparison?
I mean, potentially, I don't see either of them really slipping noms in text. I just think Poor Things and Oppenheimer will both be 10+ nominated films, and one of them will just end up winning out. And in my mind, that's Oppenheimer. Like, people have talked to death about why Oppenheimer is a clear Best Picture contender. I don't think we really need to go too much into that and why it is still considered a favorite. I do agree. I think if it is a smaller film, it is looking like it's going to be American Fiction or Holdovers. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think Holdovers can do well. Paul Giamatti is not unfeasible for a win there. Original screenplay, it's not unfeasible for it to win there either. And then we've got Divine Joy Randolph, who seems pretty locked for a win. It can pick up text in like editing if it can just maybe pick up that, which is potentially there for it. I do think, and it is that kind of charming, universally appealing film. Yeah, exactly. Production design as well, potentially. But it is that kind of thing that if you've seen the film, I don't imagine you'll put it much lower than 5 in your personal if you're ranking the 10. Like, a lot of people just universally love it. It's a charming film. It's a very difficult film to hate. If people are watching it, if Academy voters are watching it with their families over Christmas, maybe it can develop a sort of late season buzz. Especially, I think Payne, people have been talking about Payne and Direct potentially falling out now that we've got a sort of top 4, and then you've got Song plus Glazer plus Trier. I don't know, one of the sort of cam picks. People haven't really been discussing Payne. And people have mentioned also before that Payne often gets in when his film gets in. I think he could very much be revived at the DGA. If the DGA decide, they often just go for American directors. DGA decide to do Payne, and then he sort of just slips into the Academy lineup. I think Holdovers could have a big day. I wouldn't be predicting it right now because I would be predicting other things in actor and screenplay, but the options are there. It's like number 2 or number 3 in both of those categories.
Thomas, I want to ask you, so if you think Payne gets in at DGA because they nominate American directors, who then is the DGA nominee that misses the Oscar lineup?
I think it would be between Payne and Gerwig. I think it's hard to look against Gerwig when that film is so well technically crafted and Gerwig's face is all over it. Despite the fact Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling are there, Gerwig's face is very much a part of this campaign. It's very much a part of the film. But equally, you know, the Academy haven't been great with nominating female directors, and obviously that is sort of we're taking this outside of films, but that is something to consider. It's definitely something to consider. Payne is an Academy favorite. So, yeah.
But those headlines, right, that this is the first time the top grossing movie of the year has been directed by a woman, right? So it almost feels impossible that she won't get in, and that's maybe something that's changed since October. I think and there's been movement in other categories, and I've only become more convinced that Gerwig's getting nominated, just because again, like we love to keep repeating that never before has the year's top grosser been female helm.
Yeah, I mean, the only other one you're sort of looking at is maybe they just don't do a cam pick, which would feel weird given just the opportunity you can do to do someone like Glazer, do someone like Trier. I don't think Trier will happen, but Glazer, even Haynes has been making some splash at critics groups and have made December can be a pitch thing. Maybe. I mean, Lanthimos would be the only other one that I'd say could potentially be snubbed if Poor Things maybe doesn't play quite as well with Academy voters as it is with other critics groups, because it does feel like, I've not seen it, but it does feel like that kind of film that could divide some people. So maybe Lanthimos is one that slips.
I can't understand that argument because it's so, I hate sort of referring to the previous to the season that like just ended, but I mean, like Everything Everywhere, yes, it has all of this visual zaniness to it, but the story at its heart is just very accessible. And I think, especially if voters are going to be primed by Barbie for that kind of narrative, it's like, why wouldn't you go for Poor Things? It's basically advancing many of the same arguments and ideas, but in an even more visually dazzling package. Yeah, I don't see why that movie would be any more divisive than Barbie. Like, because of what? Its sex scenes? I mean, has the Academy ever really been sort of prudish about that kind of thing?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I don't think that argument really works, which is why I would still consider Poor Things a top 5 contender. Just as we say, I think it will come down to a dog-eat-dog match between Oppenheimer and Poor Things, and I just think Oppenheimer will be taking more techs, and therefore will become the tech juggernaut, and therefore will go on to win. But
I think there's an interesting thing. I want to just throw it out there. I feel Killers of the Flower Moon has kind of sort of become lower down the order. It was definitely quite strong opening up, and as more and more time is passing, everyone seems certain it's not Scorsese's strongest. There are sort of pacing issues with the film. I definitely had issues with the last act of the film, and it didn't land for me. And, you know, in terms of also the perception, in terms of what framing Scorsese chooses in terms of telling the story, there's difficulty in understanding what the heart of the story is as well. So there are issues in terms of what the film is exactly trying to convey and the perspective it's trying to go for. It lands and misses. It's a kind of a hit and miss kind of a film. and more people are seeing it. There's also been all this buzz about how it's not made enough money on, in terms of recovering budget and stuff, which I know shouldn't matter, but it's definitely weighing in on the kind of initial critical love and appraisal for the film. And I feel I think it's going to be between Killers of the Flower Moon and Barbie come Best Picture nominations, and then is Past Lives and American Fiction maybe for the last spot. So there is, you either picking, because I feel Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Zone of Interest now are locked in for the top 3 spots. Zone of Interest, I think, has really catapulted itself and solidifies, a position in that top 5 category. Killers of the Flower Moon has really become a possibility, which I wasn't thinking back in October.
Killers has this sort of confused perspective, and even Paul Schrader just sort of hit on that and was like, yeah, spending 3.5 hours in the company of an idiot is. I don't know that I agree with that perspective, but it's definitely been hanging over the film since its release. That's the criticism like so many people have. I mean, even the people who love the film kind of grudgingly admit that, yeah, maybe this wasn't the best perspective, but it was the only one Scorsese could really use for this story. And then I just wanted to make a quick comment. You talked about the zone of interest catapulting. Yeah, I mean, a sign of that is, like, I know there was a lot of relief after the short lists came out that the movie was mentioned in sound and score. Like that kind of indicates that the technical mastery is being recognized and sort of received. Because I mean, the sound is so crucial to that, to the way we experience that film. And I think if it missed out there, then I don't know, maybe we could suspect that like Academy voters aren't gonna like get it or something. Even though, of course, these short lists are not made by the entire Academy, but still, it just shows that like
it's an indication.
Critics that. Yeah, that basically like everything critics have been talking about in terms of like how that movie succeeds, that is going to translate and it will be recognized by members of the Academy.
Yeah. And just to touch quickly on Killers of the Flower Moon perspective, I think the clearest exemplification of that is in Critics Group noms. Lily Gladstone is doing very well, top of the pack, leading, wins, nominations, whatever. Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro are not doing that well. Like, they're showing up, but they're not doing that well, which does suggest that people are having a problem really narrowing down who they like, or not even having a problem. They're just choosing to go for Lily Gladstone in a way that they're not for De Niro and DiCaprio. So I could see on Oscars morning, one of them get snubbed, maybe even both of them get snubbed, which is not good for Killers of the Flower Moon. I really hate to see De Niro get snubbed, since I think personally he's probably my favorite performance in the film and one of my favorite supporting actor performances of the year. I think just his work in that film is stunning, and it's a very new role for him, which I appreciate after seeing him do just a lot of the same old stuff for the past decade now. To see him do such a different, character work and that kind of thing. And in Zone of Interest as well, I think another big shift we've had from October is the Cannes pick has sort of shifted from Anatomy to Zone of Interest. In October, we were thinking Anatomy of a Fall feels fairly in. Now it's like Zone of Interest feels fairly in, and Anatomy could come along as well. I don't think it should be only one of them can get in, but that could just end up being the case where like May December / Color Purple takes one of the last ambiguous slots, and then Anatomy of a Fall Zone of Interest takes one of the last ambiguous spots. Since Anatomy, it could just make more sense. And this is what I'm thinking. Obviously, this is heartbreaking as one of my favorite, if not favorite films of the year. I just could see it just be Sandra Hüller, and then screenplay as well. Rather, Zone of Interest, I think you're looking at a much wider package, a much wider acclaim around the Academy voting base, where it gets things like cinematography, maybe gets sound as well. It does pick up these noms. And then you can also see it slip into adapted screenplay. There's an ambiguous 5th spot there. Glazer is much more likely to happen than Trier in my eyes. And I just think Zone of Interest, with its good performance at Globes, obviously Globes don't mean that much, but for it to be performing that well, I think it does show that there is a general love for Zone of Interest. People are going for it. And it's a film that people out of Cannes were incredibly passionate about, and that passion seems to have continued up to this point. So I do think Zone of Interest is a fairly solid pick to be a Best Picture nominee. So
it's also possible that we might split in the sense that Glazer might be a lock-in for Best Director, and we might Anatomy of Fall in Best Picture, and Trier doesn't make it for Best Director. So that's obviously a possibility that I'm considering, despite my personal hatred against Anatomy of a Fall. But, that's a different thing altogether. I have to be an impartial observer sometimes, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But, I feel, same thing with Killers of the Flower Moon. I think it may not get in for Best Picture, but Scorsese might have, get in for Best Director. So, we might have a very different looking lineup of Best Picture and Best Director, which hasn't been the case.
Killers is getting in picture.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Right.
I'm a bit more doubtful now. I think it's not as certain as it was maybe some time ago.
Yeah.
Even without a hard 10, that movie's getting in. Like, it's at the bottom of, like if we only had 5 slots. Yeah, even if we were in the pre-10 era, Killers is getting in, and it's just I don't think it can win, but it's too like what we were saying for a while is that that's going to be this year's sort of like The Fabelmans or The Power of the Dog, like something that gets like wide respect but walks away with it, like an American Hustle, The Irishman. But and then I didn't like that perspective too much, and a couple of other pundits had pointed out that there's a social relevance to Killers of the Flower Moon, like it's talking about a very important topic, whereas you can argue, The Fabelmans did not have that element. But it seems, based on the reception and how a lot of passion has kind of died down for it. And unfortunately, discourse about the runtime and whether or not Ernest Burkhart is the correct focal point. That discussion has sort of weighed it down a bit, but it's definitely getting in.
I think what makes it such an inherently strong contender is it's locked in screenplay and it's locked in director. And I don't think in a year when you have a locked 10, and actress, yeah. But like in a year of a hard 10, you don't get director and screenplay and then not make it into picture. That doesn't seem feasible in my mind. But I do agree. Its win chances are decreasing. Yeah.
And it's 100%. Got a bunch of production design.
That's ignoring text as well. Yeah. Adding on those whole elements. 100%.
And it seems to be popping up with precursors and score. I don't know why, but that is a score that has gotten a lot of passion. So not passion, but a lot of recognition at the very least. So it's safe for a nomination, but I totally agree, Virat, that the drive has kind of slowed.
I will say it's interesting that we've got through this conversation so far without mentioning Maestro, which is a slight worry as to whether I still think it is fairly in for a nomination in Best Picture, but I'm not ruling out the possibility of it potentially dropping and just becoming an acting thing. Like when screenplays sort of on the bubble, directors sort of on the bubble. I think that's the thing. I think that is what is keeping
not an actor. Sorry, I meant in director. Like,
you think his fortunes have risen?
I've more seriously started considering his directing campaign. I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't know, something about being on Film Twitter or something, and just like how many people have, even its detractors, admit that it is such a passionately assembled film. And I don't know, maybe something about him popping up at the Golden Globes sort of convinced me. But I think more and more like the movie is being talked about as a technical achievement.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The thing about Maestro is that the reason people don't like it, if you don't like the film, it's probably due to Cooper. It's probably due to not only Cooper's performance, but the direction. If you like the film, it's because of Cooper, 100%. But if you don't like the film, And so it just comes down to, I think there'll be enough of a contingent that just wouldn't do Cooper. And there are such strong picks elsewhere that I just don't think he can get directing. I think the thing that is keeping Maestro in my picture lineup fairly safely is that I think Carrie is locked for a nom. And I think Bradley Cooper, currently, he's my prediction. That could be subject to change. I mean, I mentioned Paul. You've also got Killian there, of course. But exactly, for the win. Currently, I'm predicting Cooper to win. Yeah, which is therefore like, yeah, if it's winning that, if it's on the rise in tech categories, which it definitely is, I do think it is fairly like, it's doing well in editing, which is always good. And then you've got other stuff there for it, cinematography, 100%, costume production design. If the categories are weak, I mean, look at those shortlists. They're not fantastically strong competition. You've got Wonka appearing on, etc., etc. So if you are going for best picture things, you might just slide Maestro into a production design. You might just slide it into a costume design. But I do just think it's interesting that it doesn't feel like something that you would need to put into Best Picture. And it does have its detractors in a way that a lot of the films in the Best Picture lineup don't. I think Barbie's got its detractors, definitely very vocal detractors, and Maestro does. And I'm looking at the other ones, and I'm not really seeing that vocal dislike of the film in the same way. Having said that, I still think it's number 8. To a lesser extent, Maestro, I see a lot of people actively disliking it. Killers, if you don't like it, I think people still seem to respect it.
That's fair. It's just, Oppenheimer and Killers. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Oppenheimer is also 3.5 hours. Yes.
Sort of. Yeah. Almost around that
roughly.
time. Yeah.
Am I right? No, it's 3.
I think it's 3. I think it's more like 3.
It's probably 3 plus, but not 3.5, but it's 3 plus.
It's like, both very long movies, but the runtime discussion has only affected one. Like when we talk about Oppenheimer, I don't know, maybe when it first came out, some people complained about the length. And then of course we would mention the length whenever talking about its box office and how incredible it is that such a long, biopic could be that successful at the box office. But its length hasn't really been a liability. Whereas so much of the Killers of the Flower Moon discourse was about its length.
Yeah. I don't know why that is necessarily. I mean, I could posit a theory that potentially Oppenheimer is a more varied film. Like you've got the first act exploring Oppenheimer's, journey to making a nuclear bomb. Then the second act's about the making of a nuclear bomb. Then the third act's primarily about Robert Downey Jr. and his stuff and the court proceedings, etc. So I think there is more variation, which just inherently quickens the pace of it slightly. Yeah. But that's my only theory as to why that has been such a.
It's a much more propulsive film for sure.
Yeah, I do want to go back to something you mentioned, Thomas, which was a really good point you made about Maestro and how basically when you run a campaign, which is so centered around one figure, it is, like you said, we're talking about it, how it's Bradley Cooper's Maestro. And basically, Maestro's chances are hinging around whether or not you like Bradley Cooper, not only in the film, whether how he rubs off against you as an actor and as a personality. And a lot of people, in terms of discourse, are just finding him insufferable. And by extension, that is going to affect Maestro's chances. That's how I feel, how I read it. So it's very hard to distinguish. And that's also because I feel the campaign is guilty of that. It's very much driven by Bradley Cooper, his image, his effort, how much time he's put into this film. It's hard to separate other people's contributions to the film and Bradley Cooper's shadow, which is hanging and looming large over the film. And I think that might be detrimental to the film's chances ultimately, which I think is a bit sad because I think there are other things to like about the film if you discard Cooper, and even if you don't like his performance, like we've mentioned, Carey Mulligan is brilliant in the film. There's other things which are technically proficient in the film as well, but it's the Cooper effect, which is sort of may work against the film, unfortunately.
Which is a shame, as you say, because I thought he was great in the film. I thought he directed it brilliantly. But yeah, just the problem is if you don't like the film, it's because of Cooper, and Cooper's face is all over it. So
quite literally, yeah, a lot of face and prosthetics.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I mean, those are the kind of usual
The color
contenders. Any
purple.
outside kind of chances that we're looking at?
We're talking about so outside the top 10, and I think the color purple is safely in there, even with its Golden Globe snub. I'm just like, and I did just see the color purple, and
Oh, is it? Because like honestly, because I'm so far down like in no man's land, Australia. It just feels like a different universe altogether. And
Yeah.
Color Purple isn't even coming here until whenever, and The Iron Claw isn't coming here for a while. American Fiction hasn't released here, so a lot of the buzz, I just can't read it off the ground. So I'm relying on you guys to kind of fill me in terms of what these other movies are
Yeah,
going to do.
I would disagree with The Color Purple being in, and I think it's because it's going to miss out on major nominations. It doesn't get screenplay because they just don't tend to do musicals and screenplay.
yeah,
I think
but that was
Blitzbuzz was
never
just
really part of its expected package, right?
yeah.
Like
I think Blitzbuzz was
they
not a
never
big enough
really
name and
thought this.
director. Again, not really a part of the package. I think Fantasia Barrino is probably not happening.
Yeah.
So I think its nominations only really come from Danielle Brooks and potentially in Tex. But I think in Tex, it's if you're putting it in, you'd be putting it like number 5 within that category. It's not going to win any Tex. And I think this is a problem because like I just don't see it getting that buzz. I don't see it being talked about. I don't see it being this big cultural moment, this big cultural thing. And so, yeah, I just fundamentally don't really see the color purple becoming a thing and making a big splash. My personal pick to fill out the 10th spot, because obviously I said I've got Zonin over Anatomy, the top 8 that we've been talking about. And then I'd put May December in because I think that Melton can make a claim to win. I think he's right. I think it's Gosling, Downey, or Melton. I think Melton is right there. Supporting actress is weak, which I think Julianne Moore will just slip into easily. Natalie Portman could. I don't even think she needs to happen for the film. Original screenplay, I think there's a spot there for it. I don't necessarily believe people will be doing Maestro. That in just screenplay, that feels weird when it's my major problem with Maestro, which I really like Maestro, was the dialogue and was probably the screenplay. And I can see that also being a problem. Therefore, I don't know if it gets that. And I think May December gets in there. And if you can just do that, like acting plus screenplay, why not picture them? I don't know why it wouldn't then make the leap when it is so liked amongst most people. It is a film with its detractors as well, and its detractors are fairly vocal. But it is fairly unanimously liked, and it is also Netflix, which they're good at campaigning. I can very much see Netflix getting 2 things into Best Picture. It just strikes me, yeah, that Color Purple, I just don't see it. I just really don't see where it's getting its nominations from and where it's getting its nominations from in important categories.
After seeing it, I just don't understand why, given given the easy path musicals have had in the past, it's like there's nothing about it that really, like, outside of the context of this conversation. I mean, just like the award season conversation. It's like you take me out of that and just put me in front of the movie, and I don't know that about the negative buzz it's got. And I'm like, yeah, that can totally get into Best Picture. It's really well shot. To me, the star of that film was Dan Lauston, who just a beautiful looking movie. Some shots of it that reminded me of his work with Guillermo del Toro and Nightmare Alley. You were mentioning some nominations that have sort of fallen out of its potential package. I think, yeah, like I agree, Fantasia Barrino is pretty devastating, but also for the longest we were, I think, predicting that Danielle Brooks and Taraji P. Henson would be our double nominees in supporting actress. And like a year ago, we thought, okay, it's going to be Judd Hirsch and Paul Dano in supporting actor, and it's going to be Buckley and Foy in supporting actress, and then it turned out to be Gleason Keegan in supporting actor and Shu Curtis in supporting actress. And like, might that happen again? Might we get Matt Damon and Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer rather than Willem Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo? And I did have one for supporting actress, but I'm like completely blanking now on who that was.
I don't know if there is one really for supporting actress. I'm currently not predicting a double nom either, which feels pretty naive given just the fact that they always do a double nom. Weirdly, it's a thing they do every year. But I don't know if they're going to do it this year. I think supporting actor is so strong and so stacked that maybe Defoe can still happen, but I'm not guaranteed. And then I just think supporting actress there isn't really an option. for you to do a double nom. Now that Taraji P. Henson's not going to be happening, I feel Taraji P. Henson was only going to happen if Danielle Brooks was winning, and now that Danielle Brooks is not winning anymore, really, I just don't see it.
The buzz for her has, I mean, it was always there, and it feels like it's only gotten more intense after the movie's premiere. For Danielle Brooks, I mean, it's died down for Taraji P. Henson, but like Danielle Brooks she was always sort of seen as an inevitability, and like nothing about the movie's reception has, convinced me that that's not the case.
Do you think it's strong enough to win?
I'm a bad judge of musical performances because, like, given that Ariana DeBose won for West Side Story, a performance I wasn't at all impressed by, and she just like steamrolled because of, I thought Dunst could pull off the surprise for The Power of the Dog, but like, no, it went where we all kind of thought it would. And like, did I love Brooks? No, but does she do enough to win given that DeBose just did? I mean, yeah, it'd be pretty weird for me. Is the competition steeper this year? Maybe. I definitely thought so. Like when Lily Gladstone was in supporting actress, I thought, no, Danielle Brooks doesn't, like, she's going to be the exception, and meaning like she's not going to be that supporting actress from a musical who wins. It's going to be Lily Gladstone. Now that she's moved out of it, I mean, I used to think Divine Joy Randolph could sort of be this year's Troy Kotzer. I guess that could still sort of unfold. Yeah, I think right now it's between Divine Joy Randolph and Danielle Brooks. Well, I also have a really good feeling about Jodie Foster, but that's more.
Yeah, actually, look, let's come back to Naiad, because I know, Ron, you were quite confident that Naiad is going to perform pretty well in terms of just at least the acting categories and everything
else. It's acting. I don't think it's getting into picture.
But
which actually kind of spoils my argument, because when I was thinking that Benning, could be this year's Sandra Bullock, I just stupidly deleted from my brain that The Blind Side was nominated for Best Picture. So it just, I don't know, maybe the comparison doesn't work as well as I thought it did a few weeks ago, because I don't think Naiad's getting into. I think Benning is still getting nominated. I think Foster might surprisingly win, but I definitely don't think Naiad.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Thomas, because I haven't heard anything about Naiad, kind of any buzz about it. So what are you hearing on the ground in terms of what Naiad?
Part of that may be because mostly we've just been hearing from critics, and like I've said before, it's not the kind of movie that would be platformed by critics. But then again, like the Golden Globes didn't sort of go for it in drama. Not that it should have expected it to, but I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, I just think the problem with Naiad is that it's not a picture contender in terms of the acting. When you've got, like, if you look at the periphery of actress, I think Carrie's obviously in, Emma's obviously in, Lily's obviously in. And then you get to kind of more murky waters where I think it'll be 2 out of 3 of Sandra, Greta, and Margot. I just don't think water? Annette Bening.
Yes, one of your own puns in. Great. Now I'm the only person who can't do puns, but you two have got that down.
Yeah,
well, it's all part of the punishment.
But either way, God. But yes, I don't know if Bening is just there. I agree with you, actually, because I know you think, Ron, that she'd make it into the SAG. I think she probably will get a SAG nom, because I don't think SAG would do something like Sandra Hiller. But I think if you look at that SAG lineup, she would be the one to drop. Jodie Foster could happen. Supporting actress is the weakest above the line category in terms of looking for noms. Like, when I'm fairly confident that America Ferrera will make it in, that the lineup's fairly weak, since that is not a typical supporting actress nom. That is only there because Barbie is probably going to be a bigger contender in terms of, who else are you looking at? Rosamund Pike, Saltburn's not going to be a big contender. And then you've got Jodie Foster, and then it's a pretty barren category. So maybe Foster can slide in, but I don't think that's going to amount to anything in terms of this conversation. The best picture combination, Naiad's just not gonna play well enough. But agreed, it isn't something the critics go for. We will have to see with industry. It wasn't very well received. It wasn't very well received, Nayad. So I just don't see it gaining momentum. I don't see it taking off the ground in any way, aside from maybe Jodie Foster, who could happen. I wouldn't be predicting it, but weirder things have happened.
What's the read on? I know you love the Iron Claw, Ron, so I just want to get a read on what the Iron Claw's chances might be. I know apart from, let's say, Zac Efron in acting, but are we looking at that crossing over to any other category of the film, making any kind of headway apart from the acting kind of possibility with nomination for Zac Efron? But from whoever's seen the film, everyone seems to love it, so I don't see why it shouldn't. And A24 really, like, when I look back, what a dream slate, what a dream scenario they've kind of put up with. Anyway. So,
yeah, I mean, there was some buzz for Whole McCallany, but I don't think that's going to happen. Like, if we see I think like Sterling K. Brown isn't a guarantee, but I would rank him over McCallany.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
I really think
from a performance point of view,
or bust. No, I mean, I would personally nominate McCallany over Brown, but just in terms of like buzz, yeah, I mean, American Fiction is a stronger contender all around.
Is that because I mean, part of the reasoning, what I'm hearing, is that maybe A24 left it a bit too late to release the Iron Claw. The release kind of pattern was a bit off. If it was released a bit earlier on, it would have gathered a bit more momentum, and they kind of messed it up. Is that a possibility, or Sean Durkin just doesn't have the pedigree right now to kind of, sort of become that kind of a darling? I'm
going to let Thomas take this. My instincts say it's the late release date, but then again, things have broken through. We have seen sort of late releases that never premiered at festivals get in. The Color Purple is probably one of those this year. I don't know if it's the release date. Thomas, what do you think?
I think the problem is where it's getting its nominations from. Like, Efron is a chance. I think he is possibly number 6, honestly. I'd be between him and Andrew Scott in terms of that 6th spot, but he's definitely there if they do want to snub Leo, which wouldn't be impossible. But like, screenplay's not happening, director's not happening. And I know you think it's worthy for text, Ron. I know we've spoken about this, but I don't know if the Academy will necessarily register that and necessarily go for it in text. Therefore, I just don't think it's strong enough to get an off Efron.
You don't think it might get a screenplay nom, which is interesting. I would think that screenplay would be a problem.
No, I think original is too packed out. Like, you've got Maestro, you've got May December, even Air I would possibly place over the Iron Claw, given how showy the Air screenplay is. Like, it's a very showy screenplay. So I just think it might be too hard.
Is not the draw. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it has. I think it has a good screenplay. It's just not the sort of screenplay that can get nominated. When Air is much punchier, and I mean, honestly, like, Rustin doesn't have a shot in hell, but that's also a much
that is also a completely agreed.
Sort of Sorkin-esque screenplay,
and from a previous screenplay winner as well. Let's not forget Rustin.
Dustin Lance Black.
I mean, you've got Oliver Strangers, which could be that final adapted screenplay spot, and could maybe Andrew Scott if they snub Leo. Because I imagine he'll get the BAFTA, which could provide like a last minute boost, and he does become a Paul Mescal type of pick. But I just don't see that really. And then Air, I guess, is the only other one that is worth mentioning, just in case. Air is a thing that we'll need to consider until PGA. If PGA go for it, sure, it's still in there. I wouldn't even predict it, but it is still a contender until that happens, especially with SAG Ensemble. That is the type of film they do. Screenplay could just happen for it. Editing, it's a very heavily edited film. It's very showy editing. They could just slip it in there. And like, editing screenplay, I don't know if that would be enough to get it into picture, but it could. It's not
Viola
unfeasible.
Too.
So,
I mean,
Viola as well,
Viola
exactly.
Davis has fallen off, but
But I mentioned,
it's a good
supporting actress
one.
is weak. So supporting actress is weak. Viola Davis could slip in there. Either way, I think those are most of the contenders that we need to discuss. I don't know if there are many more.
I think before we move on to our respective nomination kind of lists, one last, hypothetical, which is interesting to consider, is you wake up on nominations morning and, checking all the lists, whether our predictions have come true. Mine are clearly going to be way off. So, I'm not going to be bothered because I know I make really terrible predictions. But let's say you're invested and you're a rational person.
You make very ballsy, entertaining predictions.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're rational people like yourselves, and you're kind of checking whether you got it right. What is the one, if you had to pick one Best Picture nomination that would come in from left field and really surprise you? What would be that one name that you could pick that you'd just not imagine that might actually make in the fifth slot? The last slot that you think, oh my God, I wasn't really expecting that one to get in.
That is interesting.
The Iron Claw would really shock me.
Okay.
Pleasantly.
Oh yeah, I mean, yes.
The Iron Claw, Society of the Snow. I'd say Society of the Snow is one. If it can just randomly get a bunch of texts, maybe it could.
Yeah, I actually wanted, when you said that we had discussed all of the contenders sort of worthy of consideration, I thought Society of the Snow, and maybe that's just further proof that we're in this banner year for international cinema where we could see potentially Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall and Society of the Snow, because from what I've been hearing, Society of the Snow is just very it's a very directly and viscerally emotional film, right? Not something which, by the way, I would say is the case with the Iron Claw, but the Iron Claw is also it is very it hits you emotionally, but it is also kind of a cold film, and I think that blend of sentimentality and art house austerity is sort of what one of the things that makes it so great. But yeah, Society of the Snow just seems like you can sit anyone down in front of it. And
I would also just know, I looked it up, it is an adapted screenplay. And there is that fifth spot in adapted. So I'd mentioned this before, you've got what? Killers, American Fiction, Poor Things, Oppenheimer. Locked in. I don't see any of them missing that screenplay nom. The last spot, what? All of a Stranger's Zone, Spider-Verse, Are You There, God, Me, Margaret. I would throw Society of the Snow maybe into that. I haven't seen the film. Maybe it's not a very showy screenplay whatsoever. I can see it's a disaster film, survival film. So screenplays are not usually that kind of thing, but maybe the option is there.
Are we sure Barbie is staying in original?
Oh, that is also true. I'm just running under that assumption.
I just feel like if I'm sure other people have made this argument, but to me, it's as simple as if Glass Onion and Top Gun Maverick are adapted screenplays, why isn't Barbie? Not saying Barbie should be yes, it's clearly original, but just given the logic that's already been sort of set, I don't see why Top Gun Maverick and Glass Onion, because they're based on pre-existing characters. I don't know, Thomas. Yeah. What do you think the distinction is there?
I've talked about this. We've talked about this before on Oscar. I think it's a very arbitrary distinction, but I think the official rules say based on other media, in which case I wouldn't count toys as media, and it's not really based on the other Barbie animated. I know there are hundreds of Barbie animated films, but it's not based on them. So I think that is a distinction that you could make in terms of arguing that the options you mentioned, Top Gun based on the previous media, Top Gun, Glass Onion based on Knives Out, whereas Barbie is not based on anything in that same regard. I mean, I don't really know the distinction. It's a very grey area. But if Barbie's being campaigned original, I would just go for it in original, to be honest, and nominate it until we find out we were wrong the whole time in Oscars morning, in which case, hey ho, nothing we could have done there.
Virat, you were going to ask something about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a possibility for adapted screenplay. I think it's really picked up in conversation, even in terms of the acting category for Rachel McAdams, which would be, I think, a long overdue nomination. She's a brilliant dramatic actress, and I think she hasn't got her due in dramatic categories. I think she's a brilliant comedic actress as well, but I think her dramatic chops are equally impressive. It's just
I mean, she was recognized for Spotlight. You know, it's not lost on the Academy that Rachel McAdams is a talented actress.
Yeah.
The problem with Rachel McAdams is she didn't get Critics' Choice. That is the most Critics' Choice kind of pick that you could do.
Yeah, I mean,
which is just the only worry there.
To go for her.
Yeah. I mean, it does need some divine intervention, it says in the title. Are you there, God? So, you know, need some godly intervention to happen. So, you know.
You're really working hard to get these in, aren't you? Really? They are. As I said before recording, they were going to get more and more sort of far-fetched, and they definitely are. They definitely are.
I think I have.
I'm glad. I'm here for it.
That's what Rachel I don't know. This is lame. That's what Rachel McAdams is going to be saying on nomination morning eve. Are you there, God? It's me, Rachel.
Oh yeah.
I had to throw one in there. Like,
don't enable this.
Clearly, I think we've got the title, guys. I think we've.
I think that's the catchy title we were looking for.
Yeah.
Are you there, God? It's me, Rachel. That's the one.
Well, no, not for this episode, because even if Are You There, God like breaks through, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but weirder things have occurred. Yeah, I mean, the movie has no shot.
Are you there, God? It's me, best picture.
There.
Yeah.
That's what
just all of them, just the whole series can be Are You There, God? It's me, comma, some insert title here. That should be just the name of the podcast.
That would be the best picture nomination, totally out of left field, to return.
That would be
to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than the Iron Claw, since that is picking up a lot of momentum, and mainly for Efron. And if he gets in, I think I've heard some people say like, oh, he'll be this year's Andrea Riseborough, and I would say he's more like this year's Paul Mescal if he just gets in on all of that passion. And you know, the Iron Claw, it's not like a grassroots sort of micro budget title. Like it's not the little engine that could in the way that To Leslie was. But yeah, the nomination that would really blow me away is I would be so stunned. Yeah.
For me, if I were to do a very unhealthy version of a cartwheel and, you know, strain my sort of, you know, whatever hamstring, it would be Fallen Leaves. I love the film. I don't think it's got a chance, but the Golden Globe nomination in Best Actress has given me some hope that, you know, people are at least watching it, and you know, it's a lovely little film. And yeah, I would be.
So I just think everything at this point you say is just going to be the lead up to a pun. I was really thinking when everything you say, I just think it's going to turn into a pun. Yeah, you're keeping me on edge here. You're keeping me on edge.
No, that's okay.
Shall we officially run through our best picture predictions, like in ranked order?
For sure.
And then we'll do our honorable. I mean, we basically, I think our conversation so far has pretty much
it's pretty
predictions,
simple.
but just for the sake of organization, let's run through our picture predictions, our honorable mentions, and then maybe we'll do some wish list picks.
Perfect.
To stay with our trend, Virat. Okay. Who wants to go? I will go after you two.
I think Thomas, you should go. You're the honorable guest, and we should be doing the honorable thing.
If you're doing top 10,
honorable people. Yeah.
Thank you. So Oppenheimer 1, Holdovers 2. Yeah, just in case, like that's the other thing. Poor Things 3, Barbie 4, Killers 5, American Fiction 6, Past Lives 7, Maestro 8, Zone of Interest 9, May, December 10, and then just on the periphery, I think our Anatomy, Color of Purple, The Color Purple, and I think those are probably the only two really on the periphery. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so these are top 10 based on the current conversation, which are, obviously probable. So we'll get to a wish list later. So number 1, Oppenheimer. Number 2, Poor Things. Number 3, Zone of Interest. Number 4, Killers of the Flower Moon. Number 5, I've got American Fiction. Number 6, Past Lives. Number 7, The Iron Claw. Number 8, Barbie. Number 9, May, December. And number 10, All of the Strangers. And on the periphery, I've got Maestro, but I don't want it to get in anywhere near top 10.
Okay. Yeah.
Iron Claw at 7. Did I?
That is bold. That is a bold lineup. You did not disappoint me.
The thing is that's also a top 10 based on the films which are in conversation that I actually like as well. So I feel like the Iron Claw would make my top 10 any which way because it's such a good. I love Sean Dirk and I haven't seen the film, but everything I hear about the film and reading reviews.
Yeah, I was confused for a moment. I thought you haven't seen it.
I'm predisposed to liking it, and I would want to like it. So it's Sean Durkin is a favorite of mine. I love The Nest. So it's just like it's number 7 based on the conversations around the films that have come out and which are in conversation. So this is that kind of a list.
I would
sure.
I would say All of Us Strangers in May, December, and I love The Iron Claw. It's probably my favorite movie of the year, but I would say All of Us Strangers in May, December are safer picks.
Oh, they're safer picks, but I think anything after 6 for me, they're not in conversation. Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Zone of Interest, Killers, American Fiction, Past Lives. You might say Barbie might.
Did you mention the Holdovers?
No, I don't, because I hate the film and I don't want it anywhere.
Wow. Okay.
No Holdovers, no Anatomy for Fall, none of that shit. No.
The Holdovers is definitely getting.
When I said no one hates the film, clearly I was wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the film, but
I don't hate the film. I have problems with it.
Yeah,
but it is hard to hate just for that.
Yeah.
When Dominic says like, well, of course you were being metaphorical. What, are you actually going to wash your hands?
Yeah.
And then like at the end when he sees Kuntz and he's burned and he's like, oh, like Icarus flying a little too close.
Yeah.
Like, how can you hate the movie for and Paul Giamatti is just fantastic in it.
Yeah.
I don't see that getting for Best Picture though. I don't know. Okay.
I mean, if I were a prick, I would take advantage of you and try to place a bet.
In another episode, I think this episode we're kind of like full to the brim in terms of taking advantage of Virat. Punching up on Virat is like, the slots.
By the way, I wanted to bring up like you were talking about Celine's song. You were still predicting her, and I thought that train had long left. And I was re-listening to one of our older episodes, and I was like, oh yeah. He was still confident about Celine's song when
I'm more confident about America. That's why it's Past Lives at number 6 and American Fiction at 5. They can probably swap spaces, but I feel American Fiction has a stronger chance of getting it. But I'm wrong anyway. So I feel apart from like 3, the last 2 spots are clearly not something that I've picked well. But that's fine. But that's just
you have personal picks. That's very respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going for personal picks, I guess,
No, because my wish list is even crazier than this. So this is like prepping you for a wish list.
There can be nothing crazy about a wish list. By definition, I mean, like, why would it be crazy? Okay. So I have a bit of a weird list because in my first 2 spots, I don't have movies. I have types of winners.
Okay.
So, like, my list looks kind of basically in first place, I have either American Fiction or The Holdovers, which is another way of saying I think a Green Book Coda type crowd pleaser is going to take it this year. I just don't know which one.
Okay.
And then in 2, I don't have a film. Again, I have Oppenheimer / Poor Things. And I just don't.
That's sort of what I've done.
Go,
yeah, we've just put Oppenheimer, Holdovers. I've just picked the most likely of them, of those two types, because I do agree those are the two types of winners. So
exactly. So it's just a question of, are they going for a tech juggernaut? Are they going for something of a smaller scale? And also American fiction, you know, one thing that may be held against it is like it's the ceiling on its wins. But you know, it wouldn't be completely insane for it to just get picture off of screenplay, right? That's what Spotlight did.
Yeah, 100%.
It would be a very small haul, but again, not totally out of the realm of possibility. I don't think Jeffrey Wright can win, and I don't think Sterling K. Brown can win. I mean,
I think Sterling K. Brown
can't
might
win editing. That's Oppenheimer.
I think Sterling K. Brown might. Yeah.
Win? Wow. I mean, for him, I think the nomination would be the win.
The win.
Okay.
Yeah, like if it's not Robert Downey Jr., I think it's Willem Dafoe. If it's not Willem Dafoe, it's Ryan Gosling. If it's not Ryan Gosling, it's, I don't know, Charles Melton. I think Sterling K. Brown is just, yeah, I can see like a few others winning before him, but I can see him pulling off a nom. Anyway, back to my list. Just quickly run through it. So yeah, I have like types for my first two, and then I'm just listing individual movies. Barbie, Past Lives, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, The Color Purple, and The Zone of Interest. So those are the 10 that I think are getting in, right? I said 10 movies: American Fiction, Holdovers, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Barbie, Past Lives, Killers, Maestro, Color Purple, Zone of Interest. And then, you know, on the outside looking in, I have Air. It feels like such an obvious nominee, but it hasn't been getting the buzz it needs. I don't know. I think it's like easy comparison because of Matt Damon, but it does feel like this year's Ford v Ferrari. If that made it in, I just don't know why this wouldn't. I don't know. Steeper competition. People would say 2019 was quite a competitive year.
Yeah, and not a set 10 that year either. So it still made it in despite not having a set 10.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not good. I didn't even consider that, but absolutely good point. Okay, let's go through our. Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. Have you guys gone through your honorable mentions? We have talked about our peripheral picks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have Air, Anatomy of a Fall, and I mean, the Iron Claw is picking up a lot of passion. Maybe, but I doubt it. Yeah, and we basically Society of the Snow. We've already talked about these possibilities. Shall we go into our wish list picks?
Yes, let's do it. I mean, technically, my actual list was also kind of a wish list, so it doesn't really change much. So.
Right. Oh, yeah. Word. Cheating a little bit there, but I guess there you went with a more. I guess that was your more reasonable wish list. Like, yes, you were predicting a little bit, but
in my actual list, I was like.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot in my honorable mentions, May, December, of course. My apologies. Continue.
Yeah, I mean. In my actual list, if I was with Paul Mescal, in my wish list, I'll be with Claire Foy and Jamie Bell. So I'm going even more imaginary, I suppose. I was with one imaginary person and I'm with two instead. So, you know, to sort of carry forward the All of Us Strangers analogy.
Yeah. I guess if I just run from a lot of crossover would be in mine. So we've got Anatomy of a Fall would be in mine, Holdovers, Barbie, May, December, Oppenheimer, Past Lives. So that's 6 crossovers, which suggests that this year is going to be great for a Best Picture lineup. Like all of the competition that we're looking at, that I've seen at least, is a good film. Even though Killers I had problems with, that's probably the one that I'm looking at as in terms of the weakest of the films I've watched in terms of the Best Picture contenders. It's still very hard. It's still a very respectable film. So in terms of the things that aren't crossovers, I would put All of Us Strangers in. We talked about this. It's an honorable mention. I don't think it will happen, but personal favorite, maybe we'll see.
Yes, believe,
Spider-Verse.
Thomas, believe.
Yes, believe. Hey, maybe I do just predict All of Us Strangers.
do.
Maybe I do. Just why
Believe
not?
from
Why
your
not?
inner Ted Lasso. Capital B.
Yeah, there we go.
Bring out
And
the
then
barbecue
Spider-Verse
sauce.
Be the
passages.
craziest pick.
Yeah.
Like all of us
It wouldn't.
strangers can reasonably make it in.
Yeah.
It can.
If all of us strangers can do a Zoom call together, then all of us strangers can actually get in. Anyway, there we go.
Perfect. Good analogy. And in Spider-Verse passages would be in my personal 10. Just brilliant film. Franz Rogowski should be getting nominated. He'd been picking up critics' noms, which is great to see every time he gets one. Love it. Every time.
Nominated.
Ben Whishaw, 100% as well. And then the last one I'd put in was Rotting in the Sun. This was a slightly smaller film. I believe it's on Mubi in the UK, which is not very helpful too. You're probably predominantly American view. I don't know where it is in America.
It is on Mubi.
Search it out.
I saw it the other day.
Oh, is it on the same?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, search it out. It's brilliant. It's a fun satire, darkly comedic. Yeah, just brilliant film all around that more people should watch.
Cool. One.
Virat.
No, okay, well, you want me to go? You want you to go?
Perhaps you. No. You should go because I know yours is going to be the best.
Yeah.
So I want to save yours.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Let me. I mean, basically, I'm just gonna run through my top 10 of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go from. And this is appropriate. We're recording this around New Year's, so yeah, why not do our top 10s? My runners up, Rustin, Creed 3, Dream Scenario, Infinity Pool, and Blackberry.
Oh, nice.
And then for my actual top 10, I think I have The Beasts, also on Mubi, Fair Play, Poor Things, You Hurt My Feelings, Memory.
Great choice. You Hurt My Feelings.
My Feelings?
Great film. Yeah, great choice. I was just outside.
Love to see Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh yeah, and screenplay as well would be great for that film.
Yeah. Memory, Oppenheimer, Air, The Zone of Interest, Passages, and my number one, which I've revealed in many different ways, The Iron Claw.
Lovely.
Okay, Virat, let's.
Nice.
I mean, like, I don't think we're gonna get anything. I know what movies you like this year. It's a pretty respectable sort of blend of like international picks, and yeah, I don't think you're gonna say anything too wild.
I know it's not too wild, but these are okay. These are best. When I say best picture, these are the best pictures I've seen this year. None of these are ever going to get anywhere close to a nomination in any virtual reality, or any universe, or any multiverse of madness. So here we go. Number one, I've got About Dry Grasses from Rebuild Chelan. That's never getting anywhere near any.
Number one movie of the year?
Yeah, it's my number one movie of the year. I love that film so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number two, I've got Fallen Leaves. Number three, I've got Boy and the Heron. Once again, Miyazaki might get in somewhere in animated picture, but I don't think he's getting anywhere near director, and it's definitely not getting anywhere near best picture. But I would be really happy if that happened. Actually, I would do a cartwheel in my very unhealthy state if that happened. So that's fine. So those are my top three: About Dry Grasses, Fallen Leaves, Boy and the Heron. Then I've got Coriolis Monster at number 4, Perfect Days at number 5,
yeah,
Memory at number 6. Number 7, I've got La Chimera from Alice Rawaka. Number 8, A Fire. Number 9, The Mother of All Lies. And number 10, I've got a really interesting Indian film which nobody's seen. It's on Netflix. Everyone can watch it. It's called Like an Afternoon Dream. It's a very Buñuel type ghost story. If you enjoyed Memoria, you'd love this kind of film. It's a very dreamlike sort of film. Basically, the protagonist of the film inhabits one kind of body, has an out-of-body experience, and ends up basically behaving like another person through the second half of the film. He doesn't know why he's acting like another person. And that rounds off my top 10. I've got Passages at number 11, a lovely, lovely film, and other films which are already crazy, and I've already mentioned all of them, so that's fine. But a very different top 10. which would be nice.
I mean, we all have passages. That's really cool. I'm happy that I thought, if there's any movie that has a place on all three lists, it would be something a lot more obvious. But that it's passages. Yeah.
Also,
really
I also really love Rodrigo Moreno's Delinquents, which is on Mubi right now. It's really interesting.
Also on Mubi, yeah.
So that's a really
very nice.
Yeah, I mean, none of these films are ever going to get near the Academy, but on a perfect day, it might.
We need to have a pun counter. Someone needs to count up the puns on this.
Yeah. I mean,
if
all
we
depends
were in audio only, we would need to figure out a way to have like a
little graphic. 100%.
Yeah. You come for the hot takes and you stay for the puns. All right.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers everything. I want to keep doing this with you guys, but I just don't know what else we can. I mean, there's probably more to say about Best Picture, but
I think for now, where the kind of at the end of the year, we're recording this on the final day of 2023 for me, at least. It feels like a culmination of all critical consensus. I think this year it's good to kind of look back for all of 2023 and say, I don't think we missed anything. I think in that sense, I'm very pleased. It's a very comprehensive take on the state of cinema this year. So I don't feel there have been any blind spots particularly. So I'm very happy that between all of us, despite our, varied tastes and tendencies, I think we've covered everything. So it makes me really happy.
I think our tastes have there's some crossover. We have our sharp disagreements, but like, again, I mean, Passages, like not a movie I expected to sort of share love for.
But this is the thing. I think I don't have a concrete reason as to why Ira Sachs hasn't crossed over. I think he makes the kind of movies that should. I don't see why they're not more widely appealing. And they're a really good balance of commercial and critical elements. So it's not as if Passages is a very sort of critically appealing film. There are elements in the movie which are quite commercially laugh out loud moments. It's a really funny, acerbic film. There's quite a lot of zingers in there, and it's Frank Rogowski is amazing in it. So I don't see why it shouldn't cross over, and even his previous body of work. So that's probably one key takeaway that I can think of is this is a real mystery for me as to why that hasn't happened.
Passages, I think, is his most sort of commercially friendly film, because there's so many like jaw-dropping moments. Like obviously, Thomas show. I mean, that I was going to mention. The one of the final moments when he shows up in a goth's classroom, but that scene with the parents is just great. Like the way when like her mother smiles at him when first meeting him, and then he walks away and she looks at her husband and her expression just immediately dropped. That whole conversation where he's just like, I don't think you're worth talking to anymore. Exactly. I'm done with this conversation.
Yeah, I think I'm done. I'm bored. I'm out. I'm going back to editing.
It's not like Love is Strange with Alfred Molina and John Lithgow. That's a very quiet movie. That's more of an artsy critical darling. Passages, like it's
just
quite entertaining.
The opening sequence of Passages is one of the most entertaining opening scenes I've seen all year.
Yeah,
that is the most.
Walk down the steps. We don't need to know about your emotional problems.
And maybe
this also, by the way, just a very good thematic, like that basically your transition from the whole. I mean, the movie is called Passages. It's about the transitory moments. And he's sort of saying like, no, that's unimportant. You just need to get from point A to B. And the stuff in between doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's the perfect
the
way
entire
to open the film.
You missed the chance for an obvious pun there, Ron. But anyway,
I'm not a pun person. Just do it. Do it.
No, it's okay. No, it was your thing. You were
No.
You were right on the precipice, and then I was like, okay, fine.
What was it?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
What was it?
Because it's like, the title is Passages. It's all about transitory moments in time. It's the passages of time. Anyway, it's right there. It's for the taking. And I just thought you were just there. And you just had to
I mean, I said the movie's called Passages.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I was
he didn't reinforce the
pun. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. You'll get it. You'll sort of, get the hang of it, like really digging it in. Otherwise, what's the point? It's like.
I definitely do. I mean, if I have to. Also, just like I have friends who are very pun inclined, so I think this is good practice.
Yeah.
Either that or we're probably never speaking to each other again, which I don't think is happening, but that's fine. We're safe.
Well, I mean, you don't like air and you don't like Titan. And
yeah.
I do take that personally.
I know. I mean, it's definitely sort of sucks some air.
You don't shit
that
on
argument.
me for loving Mank.
Yeah, I do.
I think that's when I knew, like, we were kindred spirits, when like you didn't shit on me for my Mank love.
No, it's not just that. I mean, Mank isn't a misfire, and it's just categorically untrue. So I will just fight with anyone who mischaracterizes that as a misfire, because it did pretty well.
You're fighting the good fight there. Can we talk? I mean, like, Virat and I have talked about this before, but Thomas, like, what's your take? That the killer is a metaphor for Mank being a misfire, and it's like, well
actually, that's right. That's right.
It wasn't a misfire.
We haven't talked about the killer being a sort of a very, very outside chance for Best Picture, because much love.
I think people are reading far too much into the killer. I think the killer is David Fincher getting a paycheck, like just sticking completely to his comfort zone, not going anywhere further than that. I was disappointed. Dave Fincher is one of my favorite directors. Like Seven, Fight Club, Social Network, masterpieces.
You have Fight Club right behind you.
Yeah, some of them are there. Fight Club, Social Networks. Pointing's hard. Somewhere there.
Seven, right?
Seven is somewhere. Might be off camera. Yeah, it's next to American History X. Just there.
Yes.
Point. But yeah, I just thought Killer was David Fincher picking up a paycheck. I think people were reading too. People saying it's about like his career as well, his obsession. Yeah, right. Sure. If you want to think it's all an extended metaphor, go ahead. I don't think so. But
I'm glad that we could end on a very conciliatory note. It's nice to kind of agree that we all agree on something.
I mean, what have the disagreements really been, though? I feel like for the most part, we're on the same page.
I know.
Yeah, and for sure.
And we just exaggerate for fun because we like drama, That's it. At least, I mean, maybe I was just speaking for myself there, so it's okay.
I mean,
no, I think we wouldn't follow awards if we didn't like drama. Yeah, we love movies and we love so all drama.
So I'd like to wish everyone who's listening a very, very happy New Year. I know all critics are all supposed to be depressed introverts and not, really given to happiness or bouts of happiness, but I'm going to change that for at least 5 minutes until I do my outro and say thank you so much, everyone who's been listening in and tuning into our episodes. Sending us feedback, telling us what their favorite movies have been, performances have been. We love hearing what your takes are, and makes us as critics feel more in touch with the real world and not just with other critical sort of consensus and live in a bubble. So thank you so much. Welcome to 2024. Hopefully it brings us more movies, more surprises, and hopefully some of our nomination picks make it to actual nomination night, and then we can all be vindictive of who got it right and who got it wrong, and then rub it into each other's faces for the rest of the year, because that's how we are. We hold on to grudges, as most good critics do. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Have a really, really wonderful New Year and a really, really happy 2024.
But thank you very much for having me on. This was a bunch of fun. I'd be more than happy to. If you ever need another co-host, would be more than happy to come on again. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. I guess I'll do some selfless plugs now. You can check out my stuff on the Oscar Buzz YouTube channel. You can follow me on Letterboxd, Twitter, High on Films as well. I now write for, just search Thomas Gladstone and you'll be able to find me. That sounds very narcissistic. Just search me on Google. But you know what I mean. But yeah, thank you. This was fun. This was good. Thank you.
This was a lot of fun. Pleasure, gentlemen.